Russia launched over 100 drones into Ukraine in overnight attacks and has not responded to Kyiv's call for a 30-day ceasefire.
Serbian student protesters arrived in Brussels after completing an almost 2,000-kilometer ultramarathon from Novi Sad to draw EU attention to corruption in Serbia. French lawmakers reopened one of the most divisive debates, reviewing a bill on legalizing assisted suicide for adults with incurable or terminal illnesses.
Russia launched over 100 drones into Ukraine in overnight attacks, the Ukrainian Air Force said on Monday, killing at least one person in Sumy. The attacks come after Kyiv and several of its European allies called on Russia to implement an unconditional 30-day truce starting on Monday, which the Kremlin has not responded to. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he's ready to meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin face-to-face in Turkey on Thursday, but reiterated Ukraine's proposal for the ceasefire to start before the negotiations. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has refused to say who might travel to Istanbul from the Russian side. Now, Germany is warning Moscow to respond to the ceasefire proposal by midnight or face new sanctions. Peskov reacted to the remarks, saying that ultimatum language in the talks with Russia is unacceptable.
A group of Serbian student protesters arrived in Brussels on Monday after completing a nearly 2,000-kilometer relay ultramarathon. Their journey began in Novi Sad, Serbia, where 16 people lost their lives after a concrete awning collapsed at a railway station. The event sparked a nationwide anti-corruption movement, largely led by students. The run spanned 18 days and passed through 8 different countries. The marathon was aimed at drawing European Union attention to their months-long struggle against corruption and for the rule of law in the Balkan country. The runners carried a letter they hoped will be read at the EU institutions in hopes of shining a light on what they called a deep political and social crisis in Serbia.
French lawmakers have reopened one of the country's most divisive debates, assisted suicide. On Monday, MPs began reviewing 2 bills, one to boost palliative care and the other to legalize assisted dying for adults with incurable advanced or terminal diseases. The proposal allows access to a lethal substance, either self-administered or delivered by a professional, under strict conditions, including the patient's ability to clearly express an informed wish to die.
Que veut dire vivre quand vivre n'est plus que souffrir sans espoir de guérison? Cette question, nous ne devons pas l'occulter. Au contraire, nous devons l'aborder avec respect et humilité. Le respect d'écouter les malades et de ne pas s'arroger le pouvoir de décider pour eux-mêmes.
Backed by French President Macron's camp and much of the left, the bill faces stiff resistance from the right and far right, who argue end-of-life care should be the main focus instead.
Aucun pays n'est allé aussi loin, à la fois dans l'ouverture, le caractère expéditif, la faiblesse du contrôle, la pression que cela mettra sur les plus vulnérables. Ce qu'il fallait aux soignants et aux malades, c'était du temps pour soigner, soulager, accompagner.
Just a few meters away, opponents of the bill gathered, dressed as hospital workers, accusing the French government of ignoring the country's palliative care crisis.
C'est ce que nous avons voulu manifester, le scandale au fond qu'il y a à prétendre légaliser suicide assisté et euthanasie alors même que notre système de santé est si fragilisé, le risque étant que des personnes se tournent vers ces solutions de mort par défaut de soins appropriés.
J'ai eu une tante qui avait de réelles souffrances psychologiques Du coup, elle n'arrivait plus à vivre toute seule, elle est allée dans l'EHPAD et il n'y avait personne. Le médecin généraliste venait une fois tous les 2 mois et il n'y avait personne pour soulager ses souffrances psychologiques. Du coup, elle a tenté de se suicider. Je ne veux pas d'une société où on abandonne ces personnes. Je voudrais vraiment que qu'un psychiatre puisse l'aider à sortir de son mal-être.
Lawmakers are set to vote on both bills end of May. In a rare instance, parties have refused to give any voting lines, meaning each MP will cast their vote based on personal conviction.
A Bulgarian man who was found to be the ringleader of a Russian spy circle dubbed the Minions was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison. The 47-year-old Orlen Rusev, who led a group of 5 other Bulgarians that carried out operations on behalf of Russian intelligence, was the first of the 5 to be sentenced.
I acknowledge that you were the first to notify a plea of guilty, and others then followed. That is deserving of further credit. I also appreciate that this was a complex case and that your plea considerably simplified, shortened, and concentrated the trial which followed. The result is a sentence in your case of 10 years and 8 months imprisonment.
The group were based in England and targeted reporters, diplomats, and Ukrainian troops. They also discussed kidnapping or killing Kremlin opponents.
An American-Israeli soldier held hostage for more than 19 months in Gaza was released by Hamas on Monday. Aidan Alexander, who is believed to be the last living U.S. citizen held captive in Gaza, was handed over to Red Cross representatives in the enclave's southern city of Khan Yunis. Israel's Minister for Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism told Euronews that Israel will not change its stance and strategy on Gaza.
We know about 21 hostages that we know that they are alive. We have 3 that they are in. We have no signs that they are neither killed or neither alive, so we are not certain. And then the rest are considered to be not alive. That is the current situation. Now with Aidan Alexander, we are going down to 20. Hamas could have laid down their weapon, bring back the hostages, and the war could be ended. It did not happen. So we need to continue the war to dismantle Hamas.
Hamas is calling the release of Alexander a goodwill gesture towards the Trump administration that could lay the groundwork for a new ceasefire with Israel. The Israeli government insists that his release was possible due to the military pressure on Hamas, which it is not planning to ease up.
We cannot afford ourselves another October 7th. We cannot afford ourselves a situation in which Hamas is rebuilding its military capabilities. We cannot allow living next to Hamas. We tried for more than a decade. We have tried to see maybe with economic benefits, with some sort of agreements, we can live nearby Hamas and to keep some, let's say, balance, and they will build their own state in Gaza. And we saw what happened.
Since a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas collapsed in mid-March, Israel has taken control of further territory in the Strip, which now amounts to roughly 50% of Gaza.
The US and China agreed on a temporary tariff suspension on Monday after talks in Geneva aimed at de-escalating the trade dispute between the two countries. Starting Wednesday, 14th of May, US tariffs on China will fall to 30%, while US goods exported to China will be subject to duties of 10% for 90 days. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the two sides seek more balanced trade, while neither wants an embargo or decoupling.
The consensus from both delegations this weekend is neither side wants a decoupling. And what had occurred with these very high tariffs, as Ambassador Greer said, was the equivalent of an embargo, and neither side wants that. We do want trade. We want more balanced trade, and I think that both sides are committed to achieving that. We would like to see China open to more U.S. goods.
Future talks will involve Besant, Trade Representative Jemison Greer, and Chinese Vice Premier Fe Lifang. The deal eases tensions following a series of tariff hikes announcements by US President Donald Trump in April. Analysts said the truce was better than what they expected and a significant de-escalation likely to boost trade.
Deal with China.
Previous high tariffs had already begun to impact bilateral trade between the two countries, which last year topped 595 billion euros. While US consumers and factories rely on China, the trade war still prompted an IMF downgrade of Chinese economy last month. While this temporary pause offers relief, underlying US-China economic tensions remain.
The trial of music mogul Sean Combs began in New York. Combs, better known by his artist name Diddy, is facing a 5-count indictment. The hip-hop superstar is charged with 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. The prosecution accused Diddy of transforming his hip-hop enterprise into an organization that coerced women into fulfilling his sexual desires for 2 decades. In their opening remarks, they said that Combs threatened these women into silence through blackmail and physical abuse. The prosecution added that Diddy has a history of physically abusing sexual partners, including but not limited to choking, hitting, kicking, and dragging by the hair. Diddy's defense acknowledged the rapper's aggressive behavior and tendencies. They, however, argued that his anger outbursts are not evidence of sex trafficking, reminding the jurors that this is the case against their client and not whether or not he's, quote, a jerk. Diddy pleaded not guilty to all charges. The trial is expected to last 2 months. If convicted, Diddy faces 15 years in prison.